Good morning everybody and welcome to this week's edition of the RDA Central West Business Leaders Breakfast, and I'm really excited that you're able to join us this morning. Over recent weeks we've had some very high calibre guests sitting down in the hot seat with me as we delve into what's happening across the Central West, and this week is no exception. We have Sam Farraway, Bathurst-based member of the Legislative Council of New South Wales Parliament. Sam, good morning to breakfast.
Good morning, Sam.
It's great to have you here, and I know you've been out and about over recent months. I follow you on Facebook and you rack up a lot of Ks. But a lot of our viewers this morning from across the Central West may know you from your previous dealings in small business around Bathurst. I believe you ran a number of Hertz car hire businesses. But for those that may not know you that well, can you give our viewers a little bit of a background, I guess, of your journey into the Legislative Council and a little bit more about your business background as well?
Yeah, no, certainly great to be here today, and thanks for the invitation. So yes, Bathurst, born, raised, educated, and then took over our family business in Bathurst. So my parents, my dad in the 80s started a Hertz franchise. Interestingly enough, he actually bought his franchise off Tony Lay, and who was the former Hertz licensee, and he bought that in the 80s and plunged into small business with mum, and from there our family ran Hertz franchises all across New South Wales for just over 30 years. So I was a second generation licensee, and it is the type of industry where you don't get in, make a dollar and get out. It's a very long-term commitment because of the assets you've got to buy in motor cars and they depreciate. But that experience for me, I ran it for about 15 years, about 14, 15 years, and my dad actually, the story about it is that I went to school in Bathurst. I had lots of ideas. I always had an interest in politics right through school and Year 12 business studies and economics classes, and I always sort of had an interest in business and politics. My dad he became unwell, and I was the eldest in our family, so I went straight into the business, straight out of Year 12 into the business, and it was a journey. I learned very quickly about what how tough it is to run a small business, but there are dividends, but it's a hard slog as well. So 30 years, and we sold it about 2 years ago, but we had franchises right through the Blue Mountains, Lithgow, Bathurst, Orange, Dubbo, and in the 90s my parents had quite a few up in the whole New England area as well, and right out west, so covered a lot of territory.
It's probably a good segue into my next question, because you've got a strong background in business. I mean, over those journey, you've probably seen the ebbs and flows that kind of all small businesses go through. Small businesses have gone through a really challenging time over recent months across the state, and especially in the Central West. You think about the ongoing impacts of the drought, the bushfires, and now COVID-19. As you travel in your new role as a member of the Legislative Council, what kind of feedback are you getting across the state, but especially in the Central West, from local businesses?
Well, yes, you're exactly right. Drought, which has been, let's face it, has been ongoing for 3 years now, followed by bushfires, floods in some parts of the state, not necessarily in the Central West, but and now COVID-19. It has been a really tough time. I think businesses in the Central West and across Western New South Wales are incredibly resilient. I think there is a huge sense of community and regional economies sticking together. But the feedback I get is that businesses through the Central West and Western New South Wales have had to endure the financial pain and hurt of COVID-19 with in some areas not a single active or confirmed case. So they've certainly had to bear the brunt financially, and my view is, and the view of the government, and you can see this in our messaging and in what we're trying to deliver, is the Prime Minister, the Premiers came out and said this would be a 6-month exercise to deal with COVID-19. With the good work from those in New South Wales and across Australia, we've been able to do it in 3 months. And my view is, and it comes right from the Premier down, is that we need to reignite the economy. We can't wait. You can't wait for the end of JobKeeper, which it seems to be the view maybe in some other states, is we need to reignite the economy, we need to re-engage the workforce, because the feedback I get is that they want a sense of optimism, they want to get their workforce back into place, they want some form of sense of normality and the process around how regional economies work. So jobs and re-engaging the workforce and reigniting the economy.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, and I think that optimism is starting to come back through. I think with the long weekend last weekend, if you went down the main street of Orange or Bathurst, there was plenty of people around, and I reckon that normality was starting to come back in. And I reckon that gives confidence to the local businesses, because they can get back to doing what they do best, and that's serving their customers, delivering those important services, and ticking the economy over. One of the things that's been really relied upon by local businesses has been the suite of stimulus measures that have been announced by both state government and federal government. We've done a business impact survey here, and some of the stimulus measures were better, more well received than others. In your travels and your work, what were some of those responses to some of those stimulus measures? Now, I know, for example, the small business grant from the New South Wales government's been well received. I think it's been extended till June 30. So all small businesses tuning in this morning, if you have been impacted by COVID, just check out that grant opportunity, open for a couple more weeks. But what kind of feedback from those different measures did you receive?
Yeah, no, I've had a similar feedback to, I think, what you're alluding to, and that is that the combination and the suite of assistance and packages that have been put in place by both New South Wales and the Commonwealth have been good. JobKeeper as a very broad policy has been good to keeping that workforce ready to go to be re-engaged, as we were just talking about. But there's two particular state government stimulus packages. Firstly, it's the payroll tax incentive and assistance, and that is quite significant. That the New South Wales Treasurer has rolled out, which is designed for those small to medium-sized businesses, and will be of some assistance. And you're exactly right, the $10,000 small business grant, it's actually designed for those that don't pay payroll tax, because otherwise, if you don't pay payroll tax, you can't get the rebate. So that's what that is there for. I think we've had in excess of 40,000 applications. Good to see that that is extended, the applications, till June 30th, the end of this financial year. So I encourage anyone to jump onto the New South Wales Government website if they haven't already. Apply. Don't rule yourself ineligible. If get on there, apply, and see if you are eligible, because every bit of dollar, every bit of assistance will go a long way, especially trying to reignite this.
And we'll make sure we put that link up on our Facebook page after this morning's chat for local businesses that are interested. If you need any support, any questions, just contact us here at RDA Central West. We're more than happy to help. I guess that probably dovetails into my next question nicely. We've had a number of stimulus measures to support businesses in the community for the here and now, but what do you think is the next kind of tranche or the next suite of measures that might come down the pipeline going forward?
Well, I think a lot of it is around infrastructure. It is around construction, it's around jobs, it's around that critical infrastructure that is needed. Since March, there's 220,000 job losses in New South Wales. So a lot of them are definitely around the hospitality sector. There may be some that are around the construction. I think it is important that the government continue to develop policies that actually have a real benefit as we go along. COVID-19 presents challenges that no government has had to deal with in recent modern history. So we are working on it as we go, but I think the state budget certainly is deferred, and the difference will be that we need to find funding and any form of stimulus that we can inject into regional economies. And I've certainly been trying to do my part in finding any election commitments, any funding that was in the pipeline, trying to bring as much of it forward as possible in my negotiations and conversations with the Deputy Premier. And I think people may have seen recently, I've been out and about with local community groups and councils, delivering as much of the funding that was in the pipeline as possible, bringing it forward to ensure that local contractors can be used. It can be a form of local stimulus, and actually injecting it specifically into these smaller regional economies. So I think policy will be developed. The state budget will be one to watch, but as we go along, we need to. A lot of it is about reigniting the economy. To give you an example, getting cafes, pubs, clubs, pubs opened is really important, because in regional New South Wales, something like 40,000 people just in regional New South Wales employed in that sector alone. So I think we've got about 18,400 people in the pubs sector, and then 22,000 in the whole club space. It might be the other way around, but collectively it's 40,000. So getting those people re-engaged back into the workforce. Pubs, clubs, cafes are a vital meeting place for people. so it's incredibly important. So I think as we go along, you can see the message from the New South Wales government is every week we are trying to push ahead to lift these restrictions, to get people back to work, the sense of normality. And if people are back to work and money's exchanging and taxes being paid, this is how we will come out of it. So big road ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's good to see some of those positive steps down that pathway as we speak. But one of the things, and I think we've touched on it before, is the value of those, some of those stimulus measures like JobKeeper, and then now the delivery of those small to medium infrastructure projects it's keeping people employed, but more importantly, it's keeping those skills in our regions, because that's one of the longer term structural risks, I guess, especially in regional New South Wales, that if once the doors of a local business close, those skills leave and people have to move away or look for different opportunities. So it's vital that we keep the economy ticking over, reignited, as you said a little bit earlier. I think that's an absolutely important point. One of the things that we've touched on is the importance of those small to medium infrastructure projects and keeping the economy ticking over. I know federally the Building Better Regions Fund was announced last week, and that kind of is targeted at that small to medium infrastructure projects. One of the things that I've seen you announce a number of local projects across our region is the Stronger Country Communities program. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those projects in this region that were announced, and maybe what are some of the other grants that local community groups, businesses should keep an eye out over the next little while?
Yeah, the Stronger Country Communities Fund has been an absolutely fantastic fund for regional New South Wales. It's one of the best things I've seen in my short time in Parliament, to be honest, and it is designed per LGA. So every LGA has an allocation. So there has been talk recently in the last sitting of Parliament that it's a pork barrelling, fund or something, but it's certainly not the case, because every LGA is eligible for it in the regions, and they have a very similar quota or allocation. So it is good because what it does, it funds a lot of community amenities and infrastructure that maybe local government or local sporting groups or organisations couldn't find the money for. So there's been some great ones. For instance, in Orange, we're going at $330,000 for a youth hub. So council are developing and going to build that. I believe it may be around the PCYC precinct. $275,000 for the extension of the Anzac Park netball courts to work in that whole precinct. $150,000 for the Trundle skate park. And a lot of these projects were identified by the community. And for instance, talking to John, the principal out of Trundle School, he said that this is what the kids want, this is what the feedback was, and this in itself creates an amenity for regional youth to be able to participate in a sport, in a community space, in that community longer term, that keeps regional youth interested and in the region. So the big point about the round 3 funding, because we've now had 3 rounds of this, it's about 50 million in the last round of funding right across regional New South Wales, and comes out of the regional growth funds, who have had over in excess of 400 million spent whilst we've been in government. So it's a significant amount of money. A great one was the Yeovil master plan, or the Yeovil Rec Ground precinct and their master plan. So the community have come together. They've identified, with the good work that a neighbouring village like Cumnock have been able to do, and a big shout out to Rhonda Watt out there, who's done an absolutely fantastic job, but coming together to develop a master plan for Yeovil for their facilities that will actually give improved amenities that will allow that community a real meeting place and a real future, not only for the regional youth aspect, but for the broader community as well. And it's the community coming together with local government, working with state government, and they're actual funding and projects that you can see that will actually make a meaningful difference. So that for me, they're just a couple, but in the last round, Orange LGA would have had close to 900,000, Cabon would have had in excess of 800, Parks and Forbes, the same around that $800,000 level, not to mention the Bathurst electorate, the Dubbo electorate, Barwon electorate, Cootamundra. So everyone's been out there delivering, and this is some real critical infrastructure in our regional villages and cities. So it's fantastic.
Absolutely, and I think the other flow-on benefit of these projects are their local tradies getting the work, local supplies, stimulating the economy, and there's also a sense that the immediacy of these projects starting to move along, which is good, because as you said at the top of the interview, it's about reigniting that economy and getting things ticking over, which is absolutely vital. I just want to change track and tact a little bit. I know that you've had a long history as a small business owner, and I think it's probably held you in good stead for this new role. But what's been one of the biggest challenges or changes moving from small business owner-operator to Member of Parliament?
Well, when you own and run your own business, as they say, like the buck stops with you. You are responsible for the livelihoods of others. You're responsible to be paying, obviously, your taxation, your obligations, and then the direction of your business or your company or the development is down to you. I suppose one of the challenges is that government and parliament is a big machine, and there are processes, and so there should be processes in place, well and truly. But I suppose it is at times things don't happen at the click of a finger, and I know constituents and even voters, myself before I went into Parliament, you sometimes say, why can't government just do that? Why can't they just do that? And what I've learnt quickly is one of my passions about becoming involved and getting into politics was around water security and storage for the region. And I've had a lot of dealings with the Water Minister, who Mel Pavey has had a tough task and is doing a fantastic job. And it was seeing new dams created, dam walls extended, and I've seen the process now being a Member of Parliament and a Member of the Government of what's required to make projects happen. And I've got a new appreciation that unfortunately they just don't happen at the click of a finger. One of the biggest positives I've learned going from small business into politics is I worked in my business. I worked on the front line. I literally worked on rental counters. I worked with my staff. I always felt it was very important that you worked in the business as much as you do on the business. And in customer service, working in customer service for 15 odd years in a car rental industry, for instance, it served me well going into politics. And because that's what I love about politics is meeting people, engaging with people and voters and constituents on the ground, because I think it does put you in a better frame of mind and gives you better perspective when you go to Macquarie Street. So that's probably a positive out of it. But one of the challenges are that there are a lot of considerations and things can't just happen at the click of a finger like we all hope sometimes. So, whereas in business, I mean, it's all down to you. The more work you put in, the more dividend, the more reward you will get. And that is the same in politics, but there's just a significant amount more of consideration to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess you're pulling the levers, I guess, when you're the business owner-operator. There's a few more levers to pull, I guess, in government, and the wheels turn a little bit more slowly. One of your other areas of passion, or an area of the community that you have been involved in for a long time that I'm aware of, and maybe our viewers aren't, is you've been heavily involved with the Bathurst Show for many years. Regional shows, they're often the heartbeat of a regional community. In the smaller the community, it's often the time of the year where the communities come together, they showcase what makes them great. And I guess with COVID-19, it's been tough for a lot of different shows because they've had to postpone. Can you tell our viewers a little bit, I guess, about your role at the Bathurst Show and why you think regional shows are important? Second part of the question is, I know there's been some grants announced for regional shows by the state government. Can you give us a little update on that one?
Yeah, certainly. So, yes, I was the president of the Royal Bathurst Show for 10 years, and I had to step down from that role. Obviously, when going into Parliament, it's pretty hard to do both. But my family have had a long history of involvement, competing and being involved with shows, in particular Royal Bathurst Show. And I was pretty young when I went in there. I'll be honest, I criticised the local show movement. I didn't think they were going in the right direction. I was told, oh, well, if you're having a whinge about it, you should join the committee. And I said, oh, okay. Anyway, I joined the committee. I was involved for a year or two, got stuck right into it. And then the president and some senior office bearers decided to retire and leave, and they did. It was a very turbulent time, I must admit, for the Royal Bathurst Show. It was a bit of a changing of the guard, but we got in there and we went back to, it wasn't about recreating the wheel, it was about reinvesting back into the show movement, because you're exactly right, shows play an absolutely critical role in regional areas, and the Royal Bathurst Show is the largest agricultural movement and event in Western New South Wales. It is a regional show that still has the royal status.
So what day in the calendar is your annual?
Well, it was meant to be held. They had to cancel it this year. It was about 5 or 6 weeks out from COVID, so it was meant to be over April. So there have been discussions. I'm not actually involved with it anymore, but I've seen the organisation put out that they're looking possibly to run an event later this year if they can. Otherwise, they will have to postpone it till next year. But 25,000 people through the gates over 3 days. What shows do is it's the community coming together. They get to showcase the very best of their agricultural, horticultural, pastoral activities, showcasing the very best of what the region does, and that was my push when I was there, and trying to get it to return to the premier community event, which it has. So it's the largest community event in the city of Bathurst, and many shows across the state play that role. And it was about getting local business back involved. It was about, as I said, showcasing local vignerons, local foodies, in addition to the competitive and people exhibiting their events and livestock. But you're right about shows that during late last year and early 2020, John Barilaro, I'd been to see him a few times, and many other members had as well, to emphasise the importance of regional show societies, and we were able to come out with that $5,000 grant per show society, which was basically in the form of a sponsorship. So there wasn't a great deal that was needed other than backing these events. Now, $5,000 for large show societies is not going to make or break them, but for smaller show societies, especially in Western New South Wales, it could make or break them.
Even in the Central West, the Cadell show, Cumnock show, all
exactly
the smaller shows,
Yep.
it's absolutely
Molong,
vital.
Cumnock, Cadell, all of them, Warren, Ningen, Burke, all of them, it means a lot. So that was put out there. Unfortunately, COVID has hit and has really, a lot of uncertainty around shows now, but we need to see where we go later in the year. But more broadly with showgrounds, recently, and this is another stimulus measure around COVID, is we've been able to inject a significant amount of money into showground maintenance. So the Orange electorate, which includes Orange, Canoundra, all through Cabonne, Parks and Forbes and everywhere in between, has done very well out of this, which is fantastic. They're going to see in excess of $500,000 spread across, I think, 10 projects, or 10 different showgrounds in the electorate. And this is all about getting on top of some maintenance projects, and we've seen doing up of pavilions, kitchen upgrades, we've seen some electrical upgrades, and these are all stimulus measures that can be deployed in the local region. So the showground in Forbes or Parks or Orange or Canoundra or Cumnock, that they can engage local contractors to do this work. The applications open and close quickly. It was about getting the money out there. Showgrounds aren't really being used at the moment, obviously, so it was a good time to do this maintenance. Through Western New South Wales, we were able to get in excess of $1 million quickly out there across 12 showgrounds. So this is the sort of stuff that is quite rewarding in politics, is that you can identify from your own experience what the value of show societies, the value of showgrounds, and the stimulus they can provide. So it's a good outcome for the region.
Absolutely, and it can be one of the positive legacies, I guess, through this COVID scenario, is those investments in those community assets and community infrastructure that will hold us in good stead for many years to come. Now, we're going to change tack here. This is my favourite segment each week, Fast Five. It's where I ask our special guest a little bit more about them and what makes them tick. Now, community sport, I believe, can kick back into gear on the 1st of July.
Correct.
I know that was
All
announced.
ages, yep.
All ages. And that's probably a good segue into my first question. What's your favourite sporting code or team?
My favourite sporting team is the Wallabies. I do like rugby union. I did play when I went to All Saints a little bit. I've got pretty dodgy feet, so I got ruled out pretty quickly for first grade, but I do watch it. Other than that, I'm a bit of a squash fan. I play a bit of squash. I haven't been able to for a couple of months now, so I'm going to be a bit sore and sorry when I go back there, but I'm a squash player that has all the gear, but no idea.
Okay, well, I reckon you're probably underselling yourself there. Maybe we'll have to have a game one day. But look, you've mentioned it a couple of times, we've touched on it. You ran your small business for a number of years. It was a customer-focused business, and I'm assuming when you're dealing with travellers, visitors, there's always pressure involved when you're travelling and you're working to timelines. Have you got any funny or entertaining stories from all of those years running those Hertz
Yeah, we saw quite a few different celebrities, I suppose, come in throughout our time, but I suppose one story is a now ex-NRL player.
Don't worry, we're not going to name them.
Who left $20,000 cash in the glove box of a rental car and returned it, and obviously he came back to collect it, and it was there waiting for him. But just amazing that someone could do that. But there were lots of different stories with different celebrities. Some you'd meet would be really decent people, and some not so. But it's a type of business that is very transactional. People jump off a plane, they need their car, and the car is the method from them getting from A to B. So sometimes you get to have a good chat to different people that come through, and sometimes it's very transactional. But the 20 grand that one of our detailers found in the glove box of a car one day was one that we remember.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess you probably see customers at their best and worst when they're kind of under time restraints and pressure. It's probably the same in politics.
Yeah, that's right. But at the end of the day, there is mutual respect, and I just think that and it's as I said before, it's what I think maybe put me in good stead for politics and being on the ground, is because there are politicians that love going out and talking to the community. I would say that I'm one of them, and I've met some that don't like that so much. And it's not to say that they're not good at their job or anything. It's just I think it has to be a core part of your job, to be honest, because I think it gives you the judgment to go back to Parliament to make the right decisions.
Yeah, I think it's a fair comment. Now, hidden gem of the Central West. Now, this could be a person, a place, a venue, a location.
That's a tough one, because I actually think that the Central West is the best place in the state to live. It's what I think is fantastic about the Central West is we have a network of regional cities, but that are complemented by a fantastic network of regional villages. And I think that there is a really optimistic future for both the cities and the villages, and it touches on maybe like something like Yeovil about their master plan, that community won't need to necessarily completely rely off their neighbouring regional city to have the amenities they want. That if we have a focus on delivering infrastructure in these regions that benefit the community, that give regional youth something to do and retain regional youth as well, I think that's the way to go. But right through the Central West, right from Oberon, Bathurst, right through even out to Dubbo, there are some fantastic venues. But I think what is complemented is the sense of community. It's a great place to live.
Yeah, actually, got to agree 100% with that one. And we did our Central West is Best photo comp recently, which was showcasing the icons of the Central West and hometown pride, and I reckon you're right, that just encapsulated.
But we have some fantastic people, like just two shout outs that come to mind would be Vicky Wilson in Bathurst, who's just been presented with an OAM, and very well deserved. I worked with her in the Bathurst show for years, and she is just such a dedicated local community leader. Someone like Rhonda Watt out at Cumnock, who has tirelessly put in so much voluntary, hours and effort and of her personal time to develop her local community, and I think she was awarded Orange Citizen of the Year, and well deserved as well. Like, there are these people, it is the sense of community and people working together to make the place better.
Yeah, I actually think that's a really fair point. It's the people are the kind of the fabric of those regional communities. It's probably a good little point for business as well. It's probably something you learn, and it's investing in your staff is absolutely vital if you want to get the most out of your business. Is that something?
Oh, definitely. You can't run a business. In the end, our business had we had 5 franchises scattered across the Central West, and at one point in Western New South Wales as well. I can't be everywhere and open every shop front every day. You need good staff. We had a fantastic team. We had very low staff turnover. I suppose I used to always say to my staff, I don't want you to get up in the morning and be so excited to go to work. Like, you'd be a bit sad if that was the case. We go to work because it's part of life, but you can't hate your job. If you get up in the morning and you don't want to go to work and you hate working here, it's best you don't, because everyone has to be productive. It needs to be a sense of being a team, and we did our very best to achieve that. And the other way to do that is, I think it's really important, we did a lot of this, is you've got to reinvest back into your local community through sponsorship, through supporting local organisations, sporting clubs, the community in general. And when you do that, you then have the sense of community and the right to ask people in the tough times to support your local business. And I think that throughout somewhere like the Central West, that is done very well.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely vital point that you've just touched on. How many times do local community sporting groups, organisations tap a local business on the shoulder to sponsor or support them? And I guess that's why right now it's been so fantastic to see local communities backing local businesses during this tough time, because we need to support each other to get through the tough time which we've started to and get out the other side, which I think is important. Now, last one of a couple more fast fives. Last book you read or movie that you saw?
Haven't read a book in a couple of months because I've been so busy, but mind you, being busy, I suppose, with the weekends and restrictions, I haven't been able to get out and about as much, so I have done I have watched a bit of Netflix. So some that come to mind is I've watched all of Designated Survivor. I love those American political those sort of movies and TV series, but a good one I've recently started to watch.
Is that the one with Kiefer Sutherland?
Yeah, it's good. And he was like the Secretary of Agriculture or something, and I think the President was going to punt him shortly anyway, so he was put in lockdown. But I just like those sort of American political shows. But a good one that people might be interested in is it's called History 101 on Netflix, just been released. It's got a massive series of different segments, like on fast food, on telecommunications, the rise of the Chinese economy, and it's been very, very interesting. Short 20-minute series and episodes, so that's a good one. But haven't put myself into a book lately because I do so much reading, and this is something that is very different from being in business is the inquiries that you're involved with, and in business, you focus on everything that's relevant to your business, everything you're interested in. But obviously, in the upper house, the House of Review, as it's known, that there's so many inquiries, budget estimates. There's so much detail to get across, so much reading. So I sort of haven't picked a book up since I went into politics because all I'm reading are like stacks of reports and submissions to inquiries, which some are very interesting, some not as interesting. But that's my reading now.
Absolutely. Now, one last fast five, a tip for any young viewers this morning that might be interested to get involved in politics or contribute to public life.
Well, yeah, we need young people to be involved in politics. We need young people to be involved in public life. So what I would say is naturally get involved with what you're interested in, what you have a passion for, because that will always ignite the flame in yourself to keep pursuing it, to keep trying to deliver it and to get outcomes. And with politics, you just never know where it ends up. I believe in politics sometimes you never choose the timing at all. And if you're a young person, you're involved in public life and in your community, and an opportunity presents itself to serve on local government or in state parliament or federal parliament, don't be afraid to put your hand up. People, I think, and voters in particular, appreciate authenticity, and they want people to be real and stand for something. So don't be afraid to stand for something.
Yeah, it's a fair point. And I think we're doing a 10 for 10 mentoring program here at RDA Central West, and one of the mentors said something very similar, that seize every opportunity that comes your way, bite off more than you can chew, and then chew like buggery when you...
If you aim here and only get halfway, you've done well.
Exactly right. Now, you became a member of the State Upper House in October last year, I believe. What are some of your kind of priorities that you're going to be trying to focus on during your term in the Upper House?
Well, I'm very outcomes focused, so as we've touched on already, I want to see the investment into the regional communities, the regional areas, and especially like the smaller areas, like the village network around Cabon, for instance. So when we're delivering money into Cumnock or Molong or Yeovil or down for the Canoundra Golf Club, that to me is outcomes focused. We need to make these regional communities better. We need to make sure that they have the amenities so that they become sustainable, so that they can attract families, they can attract and retain regional youth. But on some policy platforms, I would like to see, and we're already seeing this, and I've been a big driver in the National Party to push this along, around water storage, water security and water investment. Because what we've learned out of previous droughts is that water comes to the top. It comes to the top, that's what everyone's talking about. But as soon as it rains, as soon as it breaks, the issue around water security, investment, storage drops off. And this time, it's good to see that it's not going to drop off, even though we've had rain, and hopefully we might see a wet winter, which will deliver much needed reserves into our water storage facilities. We need to continue on that mission of raising the Wangler Dam wall. We need to make sure that Mole River Dam is built. We've seen the sign-off with Dungowan up in the New England region up near Tamworth. We need to increase our capacity. Water is going to be is essential now, and it'll be essential forever for regional economies, especially around manufacturing, especially around urban supply. So no, totally important. It's good to see that hopefully by the end of this year, the state government will have bulldozers on site. And I think that in itself will be a sense of optimism for voters and for constituents, because a lot of people have talked a big game around water, but no one's actually delivered, to be honest. And I think when those bulldozers turn up on site, I think that in itself will be the turning point that government, and I'm talking on state government, with the assistance of the Commonwealth government, is there delivering these projects, because it's a bit like we were talking about clicking your fingers and government just doing it. This is one of those policy areas that I have been amazed that how much work is involved, and how much green and red tape, to be honest, Sam, there is to build a dam, to raise a dam wall. And I think in time, this is what constituents want to see, and water security for regional areas and economies is essentially vital for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Wangler is about a $650 million investment, and so that was construction starting at the end of the year? Is that
so we've signed the New South Wales government has signed on now with the contractor who will deliver these projects on behalf of the New South Wales government. So we are talking October, November. So it's actually happening, and that's what people want to see. And for me, when I came into Parliament October last year, there was one of the first pieces of big legislation to get across was the Critical Water Needs Supply Bill that was moved by the government, and that was around truncating the process to remove a bit of green and red tape so we can get on with this. Otherwise, if that hadn't have been done, instead of 12, 18 months before a bulldozer on site, it could have been 5 to 7 years. And we don't have 5 or 7 years, to be honest. We need to get this infrastructure into place, because this drought will eventually break and there will be another one. And unless we have learnt what we need to do from this drought and previous droughts, to be honest, and have implemented a strategy and infrastructure to help us deal with the next drought, I just think voters, constituents, they just won't wear it. They want to see real action on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. Water security is one of those issues that's top of the pile, and I know that it's one of the things that RDA Central West has been pursuing and focusing on for a number of years as well. So completely agree on that.
That Wangler project, when it's finished, and it'll take years to build that. Like, it'll be 1.5 times the size of Sydney Harbour when it's finished. And yes, that there'll be infrastructure needed. There'll be farms that will be required. And that's an important process, a dialogue with those affected property and landholders. But in terms of the possibilities for the region in having a water source and storage facility like that, it's
and water
vital.
Security.
Yes,
that's the key
exactly.
point. The security of that water source, so people can invest and make decisions knowing that that's the case.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's important. Now, look, we're coming towards the end of our chat for this morning, so I really appreciate your time. Couple more quick questions. You, as a previous business owner, and I guess with COVID, we've seen a lot of changing of work practices. People have had to work remotely. People have had to adapt. If you're a small business, a customer-focused business, you've had to adapt. What do you think might be some of the positive lessons out of COVID-19? And do you think this could have some real positive flow-on effects for regional New South Wales?
I do. I think that the COVID-19 in 2020 will change the way some business is conducted in this state, in this country. I think that that the lockdown and the Zoom meetings and the working from home has forced businesses to embrace e-meetings that may not have done before, or you may have had people that liked the travel, for instance. Now, there are consequences too, because I actually do believe that business travel in general will decline when we return to some form of normality, because I think the e-meeting process and conducting their business electronically, because business have been forced to embrace it, will actually take off. But there is actually opportunity here for regional New South Wales, because I think that throughout this pandemic, regional New South Wales has proven that it is better equipped to deal with a pandemic. It is better equipped to look after and embrace and work and the workarounds for their workforce in the regions about getting to work. Because that's one of the big things that people may not realise is what corporations and big businesses in the Sydney CBD are struggling with is they can implement all the measures in their workplace to make it COVID safe, but if the train is full and a lot of staff have concerns about getting on public transport to get to the office and they have no way of even parking their car, so driving may not be an alternative, I actually think there's opportunity here for dialogue, and this is certainly something I'll be pushing with large corporations or even medium-sized corporations about having satellite offices, about diversifying their workplace so that if their major city office goes offline because of a pandemic or because for whatever reason, that they have their staff diversified and their operations diversified and scattered in satellite offices, for instance. You see this work brilliantly in the United States, and there is a way, definitely, I think, that the state and federal government can work with the business sector, but I think the business sector in itself will be looking at lots of different measures to implement ways that their business just doesn't stop because of a pandemic or because of a national emergency.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it's changed the proposition for businesses. Yeah. People have shown that they can work remotely and successfully tick off their KPIs, and I reckon that's a real opportunity for region in New South Wales, especially the Central West. So you can have either, as you said, satellite offices based out here, or people working remotely who then need to commute into the Sydney on a
it's all about decentralisation,
exactly.
Which is a huge push from RDA, and government can only play so much in decentralisation. I think we've seen state and federal governments do a really good job at actually pushing those government departmental jobs into the regions. I was only
Orange is a case in point.
Yeah, it is the best example across, I would say, New South Wales, if not the country, of how decentralisation works. I was visiting the new New South Wales Government building yesterday with the Minister for Agriculture, and it is amazing to see now it's more than DPI. DPI will be the largest office in that building, but you've got Department or Office of Regional New South Wales, DPI, you've got DPI. This is, and it works, you've got the RIC in Orange, and what happens is that you then need to attract the industries associated with that government department that can set up, especially, for instance, the RIC would be a good one. But moving forward, I think that for decentralisation to work properly, it has to be embraced and pushed by business and by industry. And when that happens, it really does work. And I think COVID-19 has demonstrated that business, big and small, will look for alternatives to diversify their workplace workforce, whether it's some working from home, some working in satellite offices that may not be impacted as severely in an emergency or in a crisis.
Yeah, I tend to agree. We're in complete lockstep. If the public service can only do so much with decentralisation, but if we can provide the framework to attract that private sector investment and that private sector decentralisation, I reckon that's the next step. So look, that brings us towards the end of our chat for this morning, so I really appreciate your time. But my last question is, we've had a lot of challenges this year. What's your bold prediction for the remainder of 2020?
I think my bold prediction is that I think that once we hit spring and it warms up, I think hopefully governments in the community and everyone and have done what needed to be done to get us into a space that's COVID safe. And my bold prediction is we're going to have a bumper Christmas in terms of travel to the regions, travel to the coast, and I'm just fingers crossed that all the work can be done to give that final quarter of 2020 a real economic boost. I think we've still got a few challenges ahead of us in reigniting, as we've discussed, the economy over the next quarter and the next few months, but that final quarter of the year and going into spring and summer, I hope is an absolute blitzer for business, for regional New South Wales and for domestic tourism.
Yeah, I share your optimism, and I think it's going to be a real boost for domestic tourism especially, and I think there's some real positive kind of steps starting to come through, which I think is looking positive. Now, if viewers this morning want to engage with you as the local MP, what's the best way they can do that? We're happy to put your website up, I guess, on the Facebook feed after we finish chatting this morning, but if they want to get engaged with you, what's the easiest way they can do that?
Email sam.farraway@parliament.nsw.gov.au. Attend to all my emails. Best way is phone my office, email, website samfarraway.com.au. But for those that are interested in what we're trying to achieve, and I, as you said, do a lot of kilometres and travel out and about, the best one's social media, Facebook, Instagram, it's all up there, and I really try and engage with community wherever I go, and community groups to promote not only government investment and infrastructure and funding, but also their club and what they're trying to do, and really the hidden gems of our region as well, the real salt and earth, the people that are out there just working their guts out on a voluntary basis to make their community a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, we'll throw your website up on the Facebook page after this morning's chat, but I really appreciate your time, and it's been a really enjoyable and engaging chat this morning. And for our regular viewers, make sure you tune in 8 o'clock next Friday when I sit down with Phil Dodds, the CEO of software development company Focus. But until then, have a great weekend, and we'll chat next week.